I'm Cheyenne. It's so great to meet you all. I feel like I've been email communicating with everyone, but I'm so happy to see. Oh, that's me. I'm so happy to see everyone here today. Let me just mute myself. Mute site. Okay. So I am one of the Fulbright Latinx coordinators, board of directors, whatever you'd like to call it. And I helped put together this panel. And so the panel today that we're going to hear about is about how to create an affinity group, which is something that I think is a topic a lot of people want to know something about, whether that's an affinity group while they're abroad, or if they're interested in becoming a little bit more affiliated with their program once they become alumni. So with that said, I just want to give a little plug to our generous benefactors. We won or received an award from the Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund to put on this series of panels. I'll send out links after the panels to anyone that's interested, but we also have other panels that are about different topics that might be of interest to specifically Latinx alumni of exchange programs, but of course may be applicable to a wide variety of people. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the moderator and the person who is going to be running this panel today, Liz, to introduce herself and get everything started.
Thank you, Cheyenne, and thank you, Vanessa, for having me in this space. I am Liz Alarcón. I'm the founder and executive director of Pulso, a media startup, but I am also a Fulbright alum. So I did my Fulbright in Costa Rica in 2013. I was doing research there on the border of Costa Rica and Nicaragua. And so I am just so excited to be here with you all because I myself stay connected to my Fulbright alum and have been to the Fulbright conference and would love to learn from all of you all and see what's possible here in South Florida because there are many exchange alums, and here especially we don't have as many groups or really many affinity groups from many of the exchange programs. So I'm not only excited to be moderating this conversation, but to learn from all of you. So I'll pass it to you all to introduce yourselves. Tell us about your affinity group and how long you've been running it or involved, because this is really your show. So whoever wants to start, I see Vanessa to my left. So you can start and then popcorn into the next person.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa. I use she, her pronouns. I am co-founder and director of communications at Fulbright Latinx. What was the question? Fulbright Latinx started in 2019. So we've been around for a few years. And I'll popcorn it to Chi-Chi.
Hi everyone, I'm Chi-Chi, Chiamaka, have no preference, and I am a founder / co-founder of Fulbright Noir, which started in, I guess technically 2017, 2018. And that was during the time I was on my grant in Belgium. And currently I'm in my 5th and final year of my PhD program in pharmacology at the University of Michigan. So I am based here in Michigan. Happy to be here. And I will popcorn to Tim.
Thanks, Chi-Chi. My name is Tim Sensenig. I am the founder, president, and CEO of Fulbright Prism. We are the LGBTQ affinity group, so we seek to empower LGBTQ Fulbrighters to be out in the world. We were founded in 2018, shortly after Fulbright Noir, our true inspiration, that has to be noted. And we've been active ever since. And I am currently a lawyer in Washington, D.C.
Oh, thank you all. And you said founder and CEO. We'll get to the structure of Fulbright Prism in a little bit, Tim. I'm sure we're all super curious to find out about it. So we all have something in common, right? I'm hearing 2017, 2018, Fulbright Latinx, Fulbright Noir, Fulbright Prism. Why do you all think that time period was the time that your affinity groups came to be? And also several of you, I think Chi-Chi, you and Tim, you are heavily involved in founding and starting your groups. Why did you start them? Yeah, I think that time period, I can think of a lot of things that were happening in our country, and maybe that has some influence as to why you all think it was a need to start these groups, but that's just my hunch. I want to pass it to you three as to your origin story. How did you all start? Why do you think this time period started? And also, this is like a 3-part question. I'd love to know how you all inspired each other, especially you, Tim, mentioning the inspo from Chi-Chi. So I'm going to start with you, Chi-Chi. And then Vanessa and Tim, feel free to jump in as you see fit.
Yeah, so I remember before I left for my grant, so I was on a Fulbright grant as well as another exchange program at the same time. And when I went to my orientations for both fellowships, I was the only Black person in both of those spaces. And I remember when I was looking for community, inspiration, people that I could look up to who had gone abroad, I started using social media to try and find other Black scholars who had gone on Fulbrights. And so that gave me the inspiration to start with an Instagram page. So modeled after Travel Noir, which kind of the same concept was meant to highlight Black people traveling all over the world. And so that was the inspiration for Fulbright Noir. And so I pretty much just looked up the hashtag, tried to find people, and started featuring Black grantees, past, present, future, on the site, and then reached out to the other co-founders who were also Black women on Fulbrights at the same time. So one in France, Spain, and then another grantee who later joined our cohort from Belgium. So it's funny when thinking about the timeline when we wrote a proposal to host an inaugural Fulbright Noir conference in Belgium for Black grantees. And in that proposal, we wrote, we're essentially focusing on Black facing issues because of anti-Black racism that exists within all communities, right? And we had said that we hope this would inspire the creation of other affinity groups that, maybe we didn't identify with, but other people that kind of wanted to see themselves reflected and represented. We hope that more affinity groups would come, and that's exactly what happened, which is really, really nice to see. So I think the timeline for us was really just, there was a need. I was there. If I see a space and I can improve it, I'm going to do that. So that's really why, I started it. I just kind of felt isolated and thought, I'm sure there's many other grantees that feel the same way. So I will focus on, what I know and can relate to. So that's kind of how it started and what inspired me to start the group.
I'm inspired already, and I love the concept of the Travel Noir page. So I'm totally seeing that gap that you're filling and can relate to Chi-Chi. When I was on my Fulbright in Costa Rica, I was the only Latina there. So when I found Fulbright Latinx probably last year, I was like, how is it possible that there are 7 scholars, 2 English teaching assistants in a Latin American country, and I'm the only Latina? So I'm really grateful for the platform and really the precedent that you all set for PRISM and Fulbright Latinx, and hopefully other affinity groups from those watching beyond even Fulbright, right? I know that other exchange programs and other people who have been involved with other programs will be inspired by this too. So I love that you shared that. Vanessa, Tim?
Yeah, I can go. So in 2019, I was a Fulbright alumni ambassador, and I actually met Chi-Chi. We were in the same cohort. And when I heard about Fulbright Noir, I just thought it was super awesome, super amazing. And another Fulbright alumni ambassador came to me, and we both talked about it, and we're like, yeah, well, a similar issue, like our cohorts are predominantly white, surprise, surprise. And there's not a lot of like representation in certain Latin American countries. I feel like there would probably be more Latinx folks, but like even beyond that, right? Because I did my Fulbright in Jordan in 2016, and I feel like I was the only Latina there too. So yeah, it's definitely an issue, and it comes from like people don't know what they don't know. People can't apply to something they don't know exists, and like that's part of like the ambassador mission, is to like get these stories out, get visibility out to to folks that don't know that these things are here for them, and to make space in spaces like Fulbright that historically like wasn't created for Black and brown folks, right? So it is really important to like take up the space and to kind of reclaim that. And so inspired by Fulbright Noir, Fulbright Latinx was born, and I'm a graphic designer. It's kind of like what I do. So I kind of took it on social media and like, you know, did all the things that I could do. I did lives. We interacted with other affinity groups once we found out they were there. And what's beautiful about the space is like there's so much intersection in the space, right? Like we have Black, Latinx, queer folks, right? And or like disabled folks. And so a lot of it kind of like overlaps, and we are like helping each other do all of this like legwork. So it is really nice how that has kind of come together. And yeah, and like people like you find out about us, and it's really great because it's just alumni doing it, you know.
Yeah, and I found you all, look how many years later, right? It must have been last year, 2021. And like I shared at the beginning, I want to stay involved, and I'm in that space of, do I do something locally with my Fulbright chapter? Is it an affinity group? What's the easiest way for me at this stage of my career with a young daughter to stay involved, given my lifestyle? And so even just knowing that you all have bomb IG pages, all three of you all, and how you all are interacting online is really great. So your graphics, Vanessa, I will say, definitely stood out as I started following the page, and it's really important to know the meeting people where they're at part of you all's work. And I'm interested in hearing a bit more of that when we dig into the programming of each of your groups. I want to pass it to you, Tim, to share your origin story, the Fulbright Prism origin story. You can share the Tim origin story too if you want.
Sure. No, it's hard to find anything else to say. Chichi and Vanessa really covered, I think, a lot of the same sentiments I was aiming to cover. As far as like the specific time period, I actually never really thought about that. But I think for us, it was just, I had met two really close friends on Fulbright, both who are also queer, and we had left the program, grateful for our friendship, but kind of thinking that we didn't really get to engage that side of our identity on our trip, and nobody was really there to help us find community or special resources or any sort of, things like that we really wanted to like kind of connect to on our grant, and we felt like that piece was missing. Thankfully, we were in, at least as far as political dynamics go, we were in a more accepting country. We all did our Fulbrights in Germany, which is a little bit more accepting. But during our grant year, we also just heard these like horror stories of people who had terrible experiences at their school, like principals treating them badly or teachers discriminating against them, and more often than we would really have expected to have heard from a Fulbright grantee. So kind of we were kind of like mulling all of this over after the end of our grant period, right when we saw Fulbright Noir really become active on Instagram, and we thought this is a great idea to really showcase those grantees and alumni who are out there doing really big things in the world, bring them together and kind of leverage that community that exists. And so that's what we did. We started the Instagram page, and then we launched our website as well to kind of try to collect a lot of resources for LGBTQ people out in different countries, and kind of just bring the community a little closer together.
Yeah, Tim, I can resonate so much to that. And it leads me to my next more than question, is a prompt for you all of just why start an affinity group based on your Fulbright experience? Why this when you could be doing anything else with your time as young professionals or as professionals, depending on if you identify as young or not. But I think about that a lot too. And when I was coming to this space, I was like, well, I think something that we all share, and just from hearing you all here, is that you had a once in a lifetime experience. You found yourself as one of few among your community to be in that space, to have the privilege to be a Fulbrighter or a grantee from any other exchange program, for those in the audience or who will watch later. And so I hear a bit of wanting to give back and of wanting to get more from your experience, not just your time abroad. But I'd love to hear from you all. Why keep at it? Why several years later, we're in 2022, you all did your Fulbrights a little after I did, but it's, in my case, it's been almost 10 years. In your cases, it's been 4, 5, 6. Why still stay connected? Why are you passionate about your affinity group with this exchange program still? And then we'll get into a bit of the nitty-gritty of the time and effort and programming and setup, so that we can really learn how to replicate that too. But we'll keep it meta for now. Why don't we start with you, Tim?
Sure. I think a lot of it has to do with just maybe who we are as Fulbrighters. We're, global citizens who enjoy exploring new cultures and bringing people together and thinking globally. And so, at least for me personally, and I think probably for many on our team at Fulbright Prism, they love the Fulbright program. They love that mission of international education. And this is a way to kind of make that mission better, and while also engaging the parts of ourselves that we really thrive on this kind of energy. So that's why I continue to do it, and I think that's why what a lot of my team would say as well. And we find it really rewarding to see new grantees get excited about hearing about Fulbright Prism and finding resources that they found really helpful, or getting to post on our Instagram page. Like, it's just really exciting to see people out there and enjoying their grant and fulfilling their mission to be a Fulbrighter.
I'm re-inspired. Vanessa, do you want to go next, and then we'll pass it to you, Chichi?
Yeah, I think I had a little fire in me after I came back, and especially being an alumni ambassador, once you talk about your experience and connect with students and applicants that had never heard about the program, I guess it was just me that I would get inspired to be like, hey, you can do this too, and kind of share the knowledge and share the opportunity. And maybe the audacity in me to think that we could kind of move the needle and make a little bit of a change in the space of the community, and how people can kind of learn from alumni and use that to be inspired to apply. So it's definitely not, it's not our full-time jobs. These are definitely something, at least for me, I don't get paid for this work in any way, but it is nice to know that you hear stories of like, oh, I applied because someone told me, and that person was in the Fulbright Latinx community or in any of the affinity groups. And so it kind of makes it worth it. But I think it is just being in the headspace of like continuing to talk about your experience. And I personally just found it, I found myself doing that anyway, regardless if I was an ambassador. So, and I know that I wouldn't have found these programs had it not been for like one person to tell me. So yeah, I think it's nice to share knowledge and not hoard it.
I echo both of their sentiments. I think, like I mentioned, originally it was just kind of being driven by the need. And I think Tim put it really well. As Fulbrighters, I think it's kind of in our DNA. It's what we do. It's why we're on the grants. And to Vanessa's point about being an ambassador, I remember literally writing that in my application. I was like, if y'all don't select me, I'm already an ambassador. So I'm already highlighting the program and trying to recruit people and just kind of share my experience with the program, especially because I was one of those people who didn't know about Fulbright. Someone told me about it in a very nonchalant way. I didn't recognize how prestigious it was. I think, to be honest, if I had, I probably wouldn't have applied or would have felt, insecure about my application. So it wasn't until I started moving through the process that I realized kind of the gravity of what I was doing. And, I really like this question in particular, because I think Vanessa makes a great point. We're not paid for this work. And, the other 3 co-founders, Sonita, Desiree, and Hannah, the first, I would say 2 or 3 years, it was really just the 4 of us, just deciding where this platform was going to go, how we were going to help these communities, how we were going to organize programming. And when it was time for us to kind of think about turnover, we had a serious discussion about the labor that we do as Black women in every space that we're in. And so we were all, Sunita and myself were wrapping up our PhD programs. I think Desiree was transitioning between jobs, and Hannah was getting ready to graduate and on the job market. And we all kind of came together and decided we needed to figure out how to transition and turn over our board to the next generation. And one of the discussions we had with them was, we wanted to be transparent with them that this was free labor that they were doing, which I think is, something we've struggled with. We're happy to do the work, but we were doing a lot of it for free, self-imposed, of course, but it's, one of the caveats of, I guess, trying to trailblaze and improve your communities is deciding how much are you willing to give, and what's a healthy kind of stopping point for the group. And I can say, seeing the other affinity groups, in particular Latinx and PRISM, seeing how the kind of work they've done, becoming a nonprofit and, winning grants and putting all these programming, it's inspiring to see. I love to just see the groups blossoming and how they're continuing to impact Fulbrighters and just people generally, from here till the end of time. So I remind myself, if today was the last day any of us ever posted anything or did any programming, we've already impacted so many people, and that's enough. If you help one person, you have done enough. So I think that's what's kept me motivated to kind of stay connected. But in the same breath, it's also helped me find comfort in stepping away too, because I know that we have already done so much as a collective.
That's such a layered reflection, Chi-Chi, as you're sharing. You're teeing up perfectly what I'm dubbing the second half of this conversation. Really, I wanted those watching to get inspired first and foremost from you all on your experiences and getting to know your intrinsic really motivation. I agree with all of you all, because that is why we are Fulbrighters. That is why we go on exchange programs, and we seek to understand across lines of difference, and if you're applying anyway, whether you know the weight of it or not, once you figure out what you're going to be doing, you really have to be cut from this global vein to go off somewhere in another country for almost a year and do what we all did. So it's just really powerful to hear you all still stay so connected and be so connected to the mission of the work that you all did, because it is a lot of work. And so in this next part of the conversation, I want you all to answer that question that Chi-Chi posted for us. How much are you willing to give? From all of you all, I want to get into, again, the nitty gritty. So how many hours a week or a month are you spending on Fulbright Latinx, on PRISM, and on Fulbright Noir? I think you touched on a bit of that transition that your team is going through, Chi-Chi, but I'd love to go more into it. And Tim, again, here, we're coming back to you, because I definitely want you to go deep into your technical background of the group. So the legal framework of how you all are set up. You're a nonprofit. Why did you choose to do that? And so I want to pass it to each of you to not only share how much time you spend a week, but how is your group set up? Are you a nonprofit? How many people are on your board? How do you divide responsibilities? How do you turn over? Do you have an MOU, or do you have elections? Just really, what does it take to run your groups on the day-to-day basis? Because what we hope from this conversation is that those watching will start their own affinity groups, or will be connected to either Fulbright NAR or Fulbright PRISM or Fulbright Latinx in a more involved way and eventually become leaders of the groups here and other groups that exist as well. So take it away, Tim. We'll start with you and then Vanessa and Chichi.
Sure, I'm honored I get to go first. I'll start with the first one about how many hours a week. It really varies. It really fluctuates week to week. I don't think I could give you a standard number. I think an average would be lowballing it, since there are some weeks when it's a lot. So I'd say probably maybe like at least an hour a week, but there are more when I do 5, 6, 10 sometimes, depending on what we're doing. Last year we were preparing for our first ever LGBTQ conference, which was on Zoom, and also a CDAF grant project. And we were working a lot to get that up and running. We had like dozens of speakers, and we were like days long conference events. So that took a lot of work. Typically we're not doing that week to week. So we kind of work what we're able to give based on our other jobs. Like Vanessa and Chichi were saying, we all do this volunteer. And so some weeks I have more free time and I can chip away at kind of our to-do list or initiate a new activity or something. And then other weeks I have too much work or like personal stuff going on where it is what it is. Our webpage is always out there. Our Instagram page is always out there if people need things or contact information, but it really depends. And others on our team too, it fluctuates as well, depending on kind of what their projects are and things. How we're organized. So Fulbright Prism is a legal entity. We're a 501c3 nonprofit in the District of Columbia. The reason we decided to do that was I'm a lawyer, so I'm always thinking about things from kind of like a legal perspective. And I thought it would just be a good way to kind of, I guess, like gather ourselves as an organization, kind of make ourselves official, give ourselves a name, give ourselves a bank account. It makes it easier to fundraise. Our donations are tax exempt, which is nice. We also benefit for a lot of nonprofit subsidies. So like Google Teams is kind of like Google's kind of IT infrastructure that they sell, and we as a nonprofit get that for free, which is really a really great incentive to us. Actually, I think that was probably one of the, now that I'm thinking about it and remembering back to like early 2018, I think that was one of the reasons we wanted to become an unofficial nonprofit, because we could benefit from having free, unlimited Google Teams access. Everyone gets their own Gmail account and Google Drive, and it makes it really easy to work as an organization. And we get discounts on other things, and it's great. So I think for a lot of all those different reasons, we decided to go ahead and do it. And since I'm not necessarily an attorney that works in nonprofit law or tax law, but I felt like I could leverage some of my background to make it work. And now I'm helping some of the other affinity groups as well explore that option, which has been really rewarding and fun. So that's how we're organized. Our board, we technically only have 3 people on our board. It's myself, Michaela Gill, and Laura Steinecke, our 3 co-founders. And then we have a volunteer team of currently it's around 9 people. And I do everything from diversity and inclusion initiatives to our communications coordinator, who does all of our graphic design and Instagram posts and things like that. And we have a programming coordinator who thinks up ideas for different programs and speaking events and things of that nature. A queer education and history coordinator who focuses on developing, primarily it's been lesson plans to date, but also just kind of collecting queer history and making sure that it's front and center of our work. So it really runs the gamut, and yeah, it's a good team. We're always looking for new opportunities to serve the LGBTQ Fulbrighter community, and we love when people kind of give us feedback, whether it's positive or negative. We always kind of take that to heart and find ways to adopt our programming.
Thank you, Tim, for sharing that, and that foresight too that you had will ensure a legacy, right? You're leaving a solid structure, like Chichi was saying, for the next generation, to hopefully not have to deal with that incorporation and all the things that starting a nonprofit. I know every state is different, but you've already done a huge labor there to help Fulbright Prism organizers for years to come. I'll pass it to you, Vanessa.
Yeah, so we've definitely grown over the years. So I started off, it was just Elena and I. Because of my graphic design background, I was a lot like the person like posting and interacting with folks online. And then Elena and I would like meet and kind of do more like tactics, administrative stuff. And then we were like, yeah, we definitely need help. So we called for a person who was interested. I think actually they reached out to us on LinkedIn, and we got Genesis to be on our team. And so that was really nice. And I think, so I'll say this before I keep going, but what's really nice, I guess, about, I'll speak for Fulbright Latinx, is like, we've kind of also like leveraged it to kind of where we are in life. And so for me, like, I would leverage it to also help me with my career and like be able to be like, oh, I have social media experience. I've run ads on Facebook. I've done IG lives. And so for me, it's also kind of helped me put a leg up in my own career. And I'm saying this because Genesis reached out to us because she really wanted to do more DEI initiatives and was thinking about that in her work and how that could impact us. Then shortly afterwards, or maybe a few months after, then we had Cheyenne on our team and our other folks who are a part of our mentorship program. And so we've had a few folks help us out, and now we have like a job opportunities newsletter. Cheyenne helps with a lot of administrative planning, like all these amazing panels. And so, and then I'm like behind the scenes, like promoting and doing ads and stuff. I guess I'll echo what Tim said with the time it takes. It really depends on what's going on. So like when we had this like Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund grant, obviously it would take a little more time, especially if there's like deadlines to meet or reports to file, or you know, I'm purchasing things or designing. So that'll take a lot more time, probably like a few hours in the week. I was involved with the We Represent conference last year with another CDAF grant as a representation of Fulbright Latinx, and that took a lot of my time. So it really fluctuates to see, depending on like what we have going on. And like when we have a mentorship cycle, our like mentorship folks then will kind of be contacting people, emailing, and so it just really depends on kind of what we have going on. When I would do IG lives, I would spend an hour talking with a Fulbrighter. So yeah, it really depends. I think it sometimes is difficult because time zones, you know, I'm sure Tim knows, like working with different people in time zones, like the cadence of meetings and like, you know, life happens. Hey, you know, my mom's in the hospital. I can't meet this week. Just totally reasonable, obviously. So, yeah, it takes a lot of work, but it is a lot of like trying to like remind yourself why you're doing this and like to keep organized and a timeline. Yeah, because it's unpaid work at the end of the day, and so it kind of can happen where there's a few weeks and you're like, oh, I haven't posted in a while. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely depends. I guess I can go in reverse chronological order of time committed. So at this point in time, exactly 0 hours a week for the past, I don't remember when we transitioned the board. So we did a hard turnover. We're still a resource to the board if anything comes up or they have questions. But when we, submitted our call for applications for the next cohort of students to kind of run the group, we were basically like, we're going to trust you to maintain the integrity of the platform. Obviously, if we see anything crazy on the Instagram, like we will hop back in and, kind of do a hard reset, but that wasn't a true concern. So now where I'm at, I'm not running the org, I'm not planning, I'm not doing any of the organization, but always a resource. So if they reach out and they're like, hey, can you serve on this panel, or can you talk to this grantee, or we're looking for something, I, come in as needed. And I would say when we started the organization and started thinking about the type of programming we wanted to do, I feel like we were putting in a lot of hours. Initially, I was kind of doing a lot of the stuff alone. It was just me kind of getting posts, finding people, but that's stuff that I kind of do anyway. That's just like my personality, is just connecting with people, learning their stories, and trying to learn about their backgrounds and share that with others. And then we had our in-person conference right before the pandemic, or the year before the pandemic hit. That was a lot of work. It was, writing a proposal, like multiple edits, sending it to different agencies, getting support from, different government groups, Fulbright Belgium, US mission to the EU, that I would say felt like a full-time job between the four of us. The transition period was also a lot of work because we recognized that we wanted to step away fully. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how we wanted the organization to be structured. We, put the applications together. We made our own internal criteria for how we were going to select. We got quite a few people who applied, and, I think, somehow it didn't register to us that everyone that applied was going to be fantastic because they're all Fulbrighters. So even just reviewing the applications and trying to select people for the position was really difficult for us to do. We had to kind of figure out ways to blind, the applicants, remove any, sensitive information so that we could objectively select who we wanted to move forward. So I would say that for us did take a lot of time. And when we transitioned the board, I believe we had a few positions. We had 2 communications and outreach positions, a fundraising position, a logistical coordinator, 2 social media positions, and then an event coordinator. And we, as a group, the 4 of us were, kind of doing all of those together, spread amongst us evenly. And we felt that we didn't want the organization to really have any hierarchy per se, but that everyone was contributing equally, because that's how the 4 of us worked. Even though I had the idea for Fulbright Noir and kind of got the ball rolling, it was all 4 of us that got the organization to be what it was. So we just wanted to make sure that the roles were kind of clearly defined, but everyone was putting in equal effort, and it was still kind of a joint team effort in making any kind of major decisions. So once the 4 of us did that, we all stepped away. So we're still resources, but none of the 4 of the original founders / co-founders are running the Instagram. I don't even know the password to the Instagram, so I couldn't, I couldn't post if I wanted to. So yeah.
So I'm hearing a choose your own adventure, right? For those of us that are thinking about maybe starting something locally, or for those of you who are thinking of joining, this is what it takes, right? Everything from 10 positions, like Chichi was mentioning, to run all things with a board, to a smaller team, like Vanessa was mentioning, that's really doing a little bit of everything, to the formal nonprofit structure that Tim was mentioning. I think it's really great to hear that you all three have a different setup, because really you can make this happen in many different ways, right? You can start a group in many different ways. You can keep a group going in many different ways. And what I love hearing from all three of you is that you all are thinking of the next generation always, right? Whether it's a formal structure or whether it's always bringing in people either from your programming or doing a call out for people to be involved. That's what's going to keep the groups going no matter your structure. So I love to hear from all three of you all that it's been really important for your groups to have continuation and for people who are involved in your programming to keep going. So that's really cool to hear. And again, the emphasis that you all are saying, that I don't want to understate this, that this is free labor. And as the four of us here on this call are part of marginalized groups, I think it's super powerful to have heard your anecdote in one of the previous questions or previous periods here on this call, Chichi, that, you know, there is something that we have to think about, not just as you all are mentioning where we each are in our careers, or as you were saying, Vanessa, things come up, but really what is our responsibility to do free labor in the systems that we work, and understanding that there often is a lot of pressure to do more, to create more, and to be always working for systems and programs that don't always have the manual for how to create affinity groups. So you all really are pioneers in doing this free work, not only for the specific communities that you serve, but in many ways for the exchange programs that we are a part of and are alums of. So I just want to give you all snaps, because it is really, really important to recognize the foundations that you all are setting for your groups. I wanted to go more into the programming. You all mentioned all sorts of things that your groups are doing, from putting on conferences to the transition in the board, which in and of itself could be a programming experience, to mentorship, these panels that we're on, applying to grants to do more of these things, IG Lives. I would love to know what you all would consider your most successful programming, or some of your more successful programs, and you can define success however you want. So I'll leave it up to you. And also, in the same breath, to quote you, Chi-Chi, and we'll start with you, I want to hear some failures. I want to keep it real. I want those listening who are going to tune in to also hear, like, what are some F-ups that you all are like, you know, this did not go well, and it can be related to programming, or it can be related to your structure. Really, again, open to you all. So success in terms of programming especially, and failures, and it can be in any aspect of your group. So pass it to you, Chi-Chi, and then we'll go with you, Tim, and then you, Vanessa.
Yeah. I would say that's tough. I would say maybe the biggest success, relatively speaking, would be the conference we had our first year. So we brought in about 20 to 25 Black Fulbrighters for a 2-day conference that was in Brussels, and then had, you know, guest speakers within the country to kind of talk about some issues as being, you know, Black scholars, Black artists, how they navigate racism, and kind of how we as international scholars can kind of, you know, respond to micro, macro racist aggressions from a place of power, and not let those things, I would say, harm us personally. I think Tim had mentioned, you know, as we started these groups, we, you know, I had personally had a really good experience on my Fulbright, but as I connected with others within our affinity group, I learned about a lot of, you know, just disheartening, sad, unsettling, just honestly traumatic experiences that Black Fulbrighters were going through. So it was a space for us to talk about that, to propose solutions, to talk about ways to address the lack of resources that existed, ways we could improve upon them. So I think just honestly bringing all of those people together in a space alone, just the visual of that in a European country was really empowering. And the fact that, you know, we brought an idea to life as scholars in our spare time. That for me, I would say is definitely one of the highlights. And, you know, I'm still connected with people from that experience to this day. Failure, you know, I'm a big proponent of sharing failures and you know, pitfalls. But I'm shocked I'm gonna say this, but I can't really think of anything that's coming to mind from our group. I will say planning the conference was extremely challenging. I think, you know, because we all have equal say and equal input, sometimes our vision for how we wanted the conference to unfold was not always in alignment amongst the four of us. So I don't know if that counts as a fit. Maybe I could put that in a challenge category.
Challenge. I was gonna say challenge. You.
I can honestly say that was difficult for us, even just kind of deciding the programming, the funding, like where we were going to get sponsorship from, even where we were going to host the country, how we were going to select who got to attend. That I would say was difficult. And, you know, I'm proud of the work that we did, but I will say I personally feel like it was a lot to do as a volunteer. Like, I feel like what we did as a group is like, could be someone's full-time, like paid job with an advanced degree. So I think that was really stressful for all of us as a group. And sometimes that I think made it challenging for us to kind of work cohesively together. In the end, you know, once we finished, it was like deep sigh of relief. We were like, okay, that was a struggle, but, you know, it was worth it once we kind of got everyone together and everyone shared like how uplifting and restorative that space was for them. I can say, you know, when I started the group or had the idea, I wanted it to be, you know, it's almost like I could see the work it would take for the platform to be where I originally wanted it to go, for example, right? I was like, oh, it'd be great to like, you know, have an official group, you know, do meetups around the world, have regular conferences, start a LinkedIn group, have an email, have a website, all of these things. And I think, you know, when it was time to transition, part of me, I would say personally, felt like, you know, there was more we could have done. There's more we should have done. Now where I am, like, I think going back to what I had mentioned earlier and just kind of celebrating what we've already done has helped me to shift my perspective on looking at the work that we've done. So I would say back then, I might have viewed that as a failure, like, oh, you know, we should have 50,000 followers on Instagram and we should, you know, be connected with this group and we should have had our conference, you know, every year without any delay. And it should have just been this, you know, powerhouse of a global organization. I would say back then I would have felt, you know, disheartened that it didn't grow in that way. But I think that was a conscious decision amongst the four of us. Like, I know we could have done that, but it's, to your earlier question, it was how much time did we want to dedicate and pour into this group in addition to all of the other things that we're doing. So I would say recently, like in the past couple of years, I'm like, hey, if the board posts, you know, one feature in 2 years or a feature every week or whatever, like, we've already impacted somebody. Someone has seen a Black Fulbrighter, a Black scholar that they otherwise would not have connected with. And if it just impacts one person, then that's more than enough. So I would say, you know, it's not quite a failure, but something I would have seen as a failure in the past. And now it's something I've learned to just say, no, that's just how things unfolded. That was a conscious decision, and what you have done is enough.
We are enough. I love it. Tim, I'll pass it to you.
Sure, that was great, Chi. I think, yeah, I'll start with some successes. We had, I think this was now back in 2020, actually. So right when the pandemic started and everyone was inside, had nothing to do but go on Zoom. We really capitalized on that at a good time, and we had excuse me, a interview plus Q&A with the director of the film Disclosure from Netflix and one of the cast members. And that was just very cool, to have like Netflix famous people on Fulbright Prism platforms talking about Fulbright issues. It was very well attended compared to a lot of our other events. That was just really something really fantastic and cool to be a part of. Presently, actually, we launched our first ever mentorship program as well, and I think we have something like 90 people signed up between mentees and mentors. And so that, like, when we were first planning, we've been wanting to do a mentorship program for a couple of years. I know some of the other affinity groups do them, and they've been inspiring us to kind of get it together and do one of our own. And so we were planning this, and we're like, well, we'll be successful if we have like 20 people sign up. So I was like blown away that we had all these people, mentors and mentees, sign up. It was really great. So that was a huge success, I think, and we're just getting started with that. And I'm curious to see how the year goes with the mentorship program. But those have all been great. Failures, yeah, I think I agree with Chi-Chi. It's hard for me to say that we've like failed at anything. Some things don't live up to our expectations or our hopes. You host an event and 4 people come or 5 people come when you were hoping for 25 people or whatever. Or you just scheduled it poorly and people exactly. Or you just you picked the wrong time zone so people couldn't come and people end up watching it on YouTube or something. But like Chi-Chi said, I think if our mission is to empower LGBTQ Fulbrighters to be out in the world, even if we reach one person once a day or one person once a month or something that they feel like their Fulbright grant or their sense of community is improved because of us, then we're fulfilling our mission. And so it's very hard for me to say that we're failing at that mission, even if it moves along slowly at times or it's not quite as grandiose as we were hoping for it to be. I think it's very hard for us to say that we've ever failed. And that's something that we try to remind our team, especially after these events where we don't get the people that we want or the questions weren't as interesting as we were hoping or whatever. We just say it made a difference in someone's life and that's important enough and we should be proud of that. And so I think that's probably the compass that you have to use. As far as challenges go, there are a lot of challenges. First and foremost, everyone's been saying this whole call, we're a volunteer organization, and so the free time to do it, varies. Our ability, our expertise and knowledge vary. When we were planning the conference, there were a bunch of things that we thought would be really interesting, but it's just we don't know anybody in XYZ field. We don't even know who to contact to have them speak on this, and we're not qualified to speak on these things or whatever. So lots of challenges. Working around the different time zones is also a challenge. Having to do most of your things virtual, I think, is a challenge. So we all kind of, I think, try to address or encompass the entire world in our mission, and so it's really hard for organizations with very, very small to no budget and teams just scattered everywhere where you're jumping on Zoom or WebEx and things like that. So that can be a challenge. I know we've gotten, I think, better as a society with using virtual meetings since the pandemic, but it's still hard to keep people engaged and keep people coming back when everything's online. Trying to think what else. I like Chi-Chi's point too about, you just have lots of different personalities and opinions in your team. And so I think we've never gotten into any heated, nasty fights, but there's always good discussion that goes on and trying to figure out, exactly what we're going to do and what's the best course of action for the team and for the organization. I think that comes with its own challenges as well. I think at Prism, we have a great group and we usually work really well as a team, but there's always really good discussions about, oh, well, do we want to present it this way or present it that way? Or do we have this speaker or that speaker? And so that's always a challenge. It's only a little one. Yeah, I think the ones that come to top of my mind. But overall, yeah, I think like Chichi was saying, that the main point is as long as we're making the difference that we've set out to make, then it's all worth it. And nobody can call us a failure or say that we're not doing enough, especially since we're doing this all for free and out of the goodness of our hearts.
The hearts are rolling in. It's a true labor of love, you all. I think that's definitely going to be one of the takeaways from this chat. Vanessa?
In terms of successes, I think I'm pretty proud of our mentorship program that we've established. I think our feedback from potential applicants has been really positive, and people have really liked the mentorship program. We've been doing it for maybe 2 years now. We have a few folks that Cheyenne has been a part of it. Genesis on our team kind of really builds it out, and a lot of folks really like it and have kind of seek it out. We get asked all the time, and it's just, I guess it was very odd that it didn't exist before with the Fulbright program, given that everyone's experience in a set country is so different based on how you show up in the world. And so it's like really impactful, like Chichi was saying, to like know what your experience is going to be as a Black Fulbrighter in Poland, because it's not going to be the same if you go to Colombia or if you go to, I don't know, Morocco. It's just going to be a very different experience. And like, even for me, like, my experience in the Middle East was very different because I look Arab, and so I have Arab privilege, as I always say, and I can, I would kind of blend in. And so that for me kind of helped me in a lot of social situations. But if, you're Southeast Asian going to the Middle East, that's a very different situation. So the mentorship program for us was really helpful, and we received a lot of positive feedback in linking people up based on their country of interest, region of interest. Yeah, and so I'm very proud of that. In terms of failures or challenges, I think to Tim's point, it's kind of been hard, I don't know, for existing in a space that's so virtual, but then there's a lot of virtual exhaustion. You kind of go through waves of like very few people attend your events, but it is nice that you can, keep the information out there and it lives forever on YouTube or Facebook. So people can eventually find it if they need it, ever. So we've had like low attendance to some virtual events, but we did try to do a meetup potluck one time. And I will say only one person showed up, but we had meaningful conversation with that person. So, that was like a nice little connection. We went out to dinner, and Elena was there too, who's on this call. And, it's just like not having, we're a volunteer run organization. We don't have money to pay ads to do this thing or to, I don't know what it would take to get more people, but we had 20 people RSVP, one person showed up. So, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but it's fine. And then challenges, I'll echo what everyone else has been saying with like team. I think it's hard to know how much time you can put into a group like this. It's hard in terms of Fulbright Latinx to like, it's been hard for us to like recruit people that can put in the time, because it takes a lot of time sometimes. And I know like Cheyenne, who's on this call, has put so much time, and we're so grateful. I'm so grateful for Cheyenne to be able to kind of coordinate and administer a lot of this panel and honestly a lot of the grant. And when the cycles of mentorship program go out, you know, that's like influx of hours you have to put in. So it is difficult, so people know like kind of what they're getting themselves into. And you know, you're going to be upfront, but it's, you know, it's hard because we've had people join our board, but then we never hear from them again, you know. So I think that's been a bit of a challenge in figuring out like where do we find the passionate people that that can kind of stick around. And you know, I don't know how Fulbright Noir did it to completely turn over that responsibility. Maybe we'll have to have a chat at some point, but yeah, it's also nice to kind of keep it fresh. And you know, you also don't want to get burnt out, right? You are so passionate for the mission, like we all want a more equitable application process for international education for Fulbright. And it's not that we don't, you know, it's not like all of a sudden like we don't care as much. It's just, it's hard because we go on to different parts of our lives. We're in a new job, we're doing this, we're doing that. And, you know, we need to pass over the torch at some point. So yeah.
I have to piggyback off of that, adding to challenges and failures, the point about people joining the board and never hearing from them again. We are not immune from that. And I put this in the chat, but I think for any organization turnover, like that's what keeps me up at night is like, where is this going to be 10 years from now if I step away, 5 years from now? And that has been a challenge. You know, I don't know what the next round of turnover is going to be like. We just hope for the best. And I think I have had to make peace with, there may be a day where someone hands me the account and I just have to put a post and write a very thoughtful caption saying, you know, thanks for your support over the years. We are now inactive, but we'll always be a family or a community. I'm just kind of like, that day might come, it might not, but just being honest and transparent about that, I think it's difficult to like keep things going and step away from them at the same time. And I think about, you know, how could our affinity groups be institutionalized? How could we make these groups operate in a way where it's not solely volunteer work, right? Or applying for grants to cover funding. And I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But I just put it out into the universe and hopefully maybe the next generation can figure out a way to do that. But it's that is a challenge. As you were saying that, I was like, let me just hop in there. We do not have it figured out at all, but we just did our best. So that's all we can do.
I love that you all have reframed this, and also the whole Fulbrighters don't fail approach is just so present and in all this, like we tried, we're doing our best, always optimistic, but some things suck. Some things just suck. Some things are just hard. Some things are challenging. That was a sentiment that I really wanted to bring out here. So we got there, and so +1 here to your candor, Chichi. I love it. And to all three of you all for sharing, again, the reality of doing a fully volunteer-led pursuit. And I use the word pioneers, which you all really are, but also trailblazers. And so you're the only ones doing what you're doing. You're starting this off. You're the first cohort of your groups. You're trying to find people to bring it in. You have really ambitious programming that you want to do, whether it's conferences or mentorship programs, or all of the above. And I'm really just proud to hear that you all are cutting yourself some slack too, and saying, even if it's one person that we helped, even if it's one person that saw themselves and saw the possibility of being able to apply to this program, or even if you are doing one post to help the LGBTQ community see themselves out in the world, like you were saying, Tim, it's worth it, and you're fulfilling your mission. Again, to quote you, it is a labor of love. So I'm both proud that we could get there to really share the real stuff too, for those watching to see that it's hard, that it's again a volunteer-led initiative, that there are different personalities on your leadership teams that you have to negotiate, and that despite you not having any crazy drama, to your point, Tim, of nothing horrible happening, it is challenging to mediate and moderate and coming to agreements to make sure that your groups thrive. So I'm just really grateful to know that you all are doing this, and yes, Jeremy, +1 to you, that they are always excited to hear about it, because it really does help bring the experience just beyond your grant year or your scholar year or your ETA year. So with all of that, you all, I wanted to prompt for a final question and also open it up for questions from those who are joining us here. Write in the chat anything that's on your mind that you want Chi-Chi, Tim, and Vanessa to elaborate on. We'll definitely leave some space for that too. And I wanted to start with you, Vanessa, this time on my last prompt here. You touched on it a bit, which was how you are leveraging your affinity group for your professional growth. So I wanted to prompt you all on sharing a bit more of that. You can also share personally how these affinity groups have enhanced your lives. I think you mentioned it, Chi-Chi, a bit on just the connections and the friendships that you all have made. You talked about that, Tim. So the question is, how has being involved here helped you all professionally and personally? And an anecdote would be great, a story that you want to share. So we'll start with you, Vanessa. You talked about social media. What else is there that you want us to know about how this group has impacted you?
Yeah, so I think so as a graphic designer, there are points in my life where I was involved with Fulbright Latinx, and I was also like in a transition career-wise. So it always kind of helped me leverage like, okay, what kind of work do I want to be doing, and have that reflect in the title and the responsibilities, and that I would be able to talk about that in like job interviews and say, yeah, I have run ads, I have manage social media analytics and kind of like made decisions from it and whatnot. So it definitely leveraged it, and it helped me land my current job. And sorry, what was the second question you asked? I totally lost my train of thought.
Just professionally and personally.
Yes. And professionally. Personally, I think it's so, I don't know, it's really nice to connect with other Fulbrighters that lead such different lives, but like there's like, I don't know, it's because we're Fulbrighters, but there's just such a nice connection when you meet someone else that has kind of been through, the same application process, that you're able to talk to freely about, traveling and being able to, having done so many things. It's really inspiring to be in that space. And I feel like not only as affinity groups do we inspire each other, but I'll speak for myself. I feel like all the people that I have met like will inspire me personally to like think about doing a PhD, or to like, even like, oh, what is it like to start a nonprofit? Or it's really nice to learn from so many different people, even people you didn't know that would like live close to you, to meet up with them and to kind of keep those connections in your life. I think it's nice to have people that, can be role models and mentors for you, and just like a positive source of inspiration for you to be like, oh, what's this person got going on? And you're like, wow, this is great. and to, spread the positive energy and vibes to them as well. And yeah, it's just, yeah, that's been really nice.
Tim, we'll go with you and then we'll close with you, Chi-Chi.
There we go. What was the first question? I got lost in, but we're like struggling tonight. I was like focused on the second part of the question. I was like, wait, what was the first part of the question?
How has the being a part of Fulbright Prison
Professional and
affected
then
you professionally, personally?
I was like so focused. I was like trying to think of a personal example. I got lost. Professionally, I have to be honest. I don't know if it's helped me get a job or has, you know, I don't know, I'm not sure how much it's advanced my career, but it has definitely prepared me for certain things that I do on my job, in a very real way. Um, so, for example, back when I was in law school and we just started this organization, and I was doing two things for Fulbright Prison. One was, coordinating with a lot of people all over the world, both for our programming. So, for example, I was building out this resource library on our webpage where we have all of these countries listed, and then like these drop down like other pages with all these resources listed. So I was coordinating that, but then I was also, meeting with Fulbright staff and administrators and grantees all over the world, like having meetings and coordinating across time zones. And so I was doing that for a year or two when I started my current job as an attorney at an international law firm. And currently at my job, I do a lot of international meetings. I'm always my team, even though I'm based here in DC, my actual practice group is kind of all over the world. Just the nature of what we're doing is international. So I work with people in Paris and Milan and Shanghai and Melbourne and like cities all over the world. And so having already had that experience from Fulbright Prism to just like, be accustomed to working across time zones and thinking globally really, really, I don't know, prepared me for that, I think. And then the other thing that I work on, so one of our kind of internal law firm resources that we maintain just for our kind of in-house use is a library of specific statutes and regulations in each jurisdiction around the world, for my specific practice group and practice area. And so I kind of manage that, and it's very much akin to our resource library. It's broken down country by country, and we have the template with all the different like questions that we ask for each country. Like, does the country do this? Does the country do that? And so it's almost like exactly like the Fulbright Prism Resource Library, except I get paid to do it. So I think kind of having that background of having already coordinated that and done something similar to that, I was like, wow, this is like so crazy how like similar this one project is that I work on. And that's not like all of my job, but that's just like one thing that I kind of got staffed on, and now I am kind of in charge of managing month to month. And it's just funny how similar it is. So I think it's not like Vanessa where I could say like, well, I'm CEO of this nonprofit, give me a law job. It wasn't quite a direct transfer like that, but all of the skills that I kind of sharpened and learned through Fulbright Prism definitely are paying off, and helping me a lot.
You would think I could unmute faster as long as we've been doing virtual events. I would say, yeah, everything that Vanessa and Tim shared. I for sure highlight the organizational skills it took to put on the first conference that we had, and so many applications. I mean, fellowships that I've applied for, job positions, interviewing, tell us about a time when you had to. I mean, I draw on Fulbright Noir and my Fulbright experience as a whole, all of the time. I think that I don't know that I can say it's propelled my career forward in like a concrete way. Like, I can't say it got me a job, which is awesome, Vanessa, that you were able to kind of leverage that. But I can say that it's definitely further developed my skills that I've been able to speak to. So it's been kind of a catalyst for me to be able to discuss, some of the skills that I have that are transferable to positions that I'm interested in. And so I would say actually a lot of my interest and background is in the pharmaceutical industry. So I'm interested in kind of non-clinical safety space, and that's aligns with my degree. But there have been a number of times where recruiters and people at, large companies have said like, wow, I'm so impressed by the work that you did with Fulbright Noir and all of your extracurricular activities. So it's kind of like I'm able to weave in that experience with the other things that I've done to kind of build this trend of showing, whatever space that I'm in, I'm going to improve, whether that's Fulbright, whether that's at school, whether it's at work. So I think it just kind of further enhances that. So I would also say the network for sure. The people that I had to collaborate with to kind of get that support, the people that we met are still incredible resources for me, have written me letters of recommendation. So that's been pretty good. And then, to Vanessa's point, I think just the community, the people that you meet, that you network with, I mean, everyone's inspiring. I can say everyone on this call, we're all together again. Because of the work that we're doing with our affinity groups. And I'm always inspired by the both of you from hearing like what you're doing, and even just hearing, your genesis stories and why you kind of structured the organizations the way that you did. It's cool to hear that and see like how y'all approach that differently and very powerfully too, and still going, right? Like we bowed out gracefully and you guys are still going strong and just making such an amazing impact. So I would say being a part of the Fulbright Noir space has really been a privilege to just be around a bunch of movers and shakers and people who are doing incredible, extraordinary work. I would say that's definitely the best part, is the people that we meet. And even as, we're on this call, I'm like, I don't have time, but like we as, founders and I see Elena's laughing, founders and co-founders and executive members should leverage the network within ourselves. I think we have spent a lot of time trying to help other people, and maybe we can direct some of that energy and effort towards ourselves and use each other more as a resource. So I'm, at moments like this, events like this, I'm like, yeah, I should like reach out to you all more and just like check in, and maybe we can do a meetup or something like that down the line. But we're we're all Fulbrighters, we don't fail. So it's a wink wink, it's a good group.
I see a t-shirt opportunity. Fulbrighters don't fail. It'll help us with our revenue. We can divide it among groups, right? And we have another tagline here, which is "It's nice to share knowledge and not hoard it," Vanessa. So that's also another t-shirt idea.
I love it.
That we can bring to life and help with the sustainability of our group. All right, you all. So we have about 6 minutes left together. And I want to pass it to Jeremy, who I see has a question, and I'm going to read it out and then pass it to him to see if he wants to add more. So his question for you all is, are there any misconceptions you feel like the Fulbright program has about the affinity groups that we as staff could help dispel? I ask because when I do orientations, I and my colleague share about the affinity groups and want to make sure we represent you well. Happy to say more. So questions there for you all to recap to in the chat, whoever wants to jump in.
I can speak to this. I think one thing that comes to mind is, this was my impression, when we all were born, all the affinity groups were born, it kind of felt like the Fulbright program was a bit like intimidated by us, because we were raising a lot of like facts about the lack of representation and support for marginalized groups, and it wasn't an attack, it was like facts. And we saw a need for obviously the affinity groups, and we wanted to do something about it, which is why Chi started Fulbright Noir, and like Fulbright Prism began, and Fulbright Latinx. And so yeah, I think it was an interesting dynamic, and I'll speak to the experience with Fulbright Latinx, where sometimes we would share information and it felt like the State Department or Fulbright program felt attacked, and like didn't really realize that the work we were trying to do was to like help that. It's not like it was our job just to like be negative. It was just, hey, these are the facts. Like, how can we like spread the word more about Fulbright so people hear about it?
I can add to that. Although I'm somewhat removed, I feel like I think about this a lot with recruitment, because I feel like there's there's a way to go about it where maybe, people have different views on how to approach discussing the challenges with the program, right? So I think for us, I can speak for Fulbright Noir, it was really important that we tell the truth about the negative experiences that grantees are having. That said, that's obviously not going to be a good marketing or recruiting tool for the Fulbright program, to say, well, hey, this, Black woman who went to this specific country was the only Black person in the whole city and had rocks thrown at her and felt unsafe the entire time she was there and had a terrible experience, right? But I think there has to be a tactful way to be honest about the challenges that we face while working together to come up with solutions, so that we feel free to kind of speak to the facts that Vanessa mentioned, while also understanding that we can still support the program, like the two can coexist. I don't know if there are any misconceptions about Fulbright Noir per se. I think, I remember when they put like the blurb on the Fulbright website that, we're not affiliated with the Fulbright program in any official way. I think that's a good thing. Just to be honest, I think there might be things that, because it's a government supported grant, there might be certain things that we couldn't do or say in the way that we do as independent groups. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I was gonna say. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat to make sure. Yeah, I think it's hard. I can't think of many specific misconceptions. But I think probably piggybacking off of what Chi was saying is that I think originally maybe the Fulbright program or people even outside the Fulbright program saw us as an extension of the program itself. And I think the Fulbright program tried to figure out ways to kind of control us or bring us, within their kind of sphere of influence, and people outside of the program, not in the State Department or working for the Fulbright program, kind of thought, oh, well, we have Fulbright in our name, maybe we're part of that. So we've worked very hard to dispel that misconception, and that like we love the Fulbright program, we're advocates of the Fulbright program, we all did Fulbright grants, but we're here to fix real problems and advocate for ourselves in ways that nobody is necessarily doing. And we're going to do that on our own terms and in our own way, which I think is one of our great advantages as an affinity group, is that we can do that. Like Chi was saying, we're not tied to the government, we're not tied to any specific message or rules, and in many ways, I think that is a huge advantage. And I think probably the Fulbright program has started to realize that, and has looked to us more now as a partner, and kind of learn to work with us, and not try to kind of figure us out and pin us down and stuff. So I think, yeah, that's probably the only misconception that comes to my mind. As far as working with grantees and trying to get our message out there, I think just continuing to push our mission and push our our websites and our Instagrams, our links, getting our name out there. So grantees can find us. I know, like, I think back to when I was a grantee in Germany in 2016, 2017, like if someone had told me about an organization like Fulbright Prison, I would be so excited. I'd like do a deep dive to their website and contact other people. We get people like that all the time. Every time new grantees join, we always get lots of people email out. Actually, just this week, I got a bunch of emails from a new program that started. They're like, we heard about you and we're so excited. So it's, yeah, I think just keep pushing our name out there and letting people know that we exist and we're there to represent them and to kind of bring them together is a good place to start.
Well, thank you all. It looks like we are at time. You all have shared so many important, powerful anecdotes. You've re-inspired me to stay connected with Fulbright, and hopefully those watching here and who will watch later will also get inspired to either join you all, whether it's Fulbright Noir, Fulbright Latinx, Fulbright Prism, or to start their own affinity group. Thank you all so much. Claps and snaps for this conversation. I do hope we all stay connected as well, to Chi-Chi's point. And